Hi, welcome to Spotlight, your story, their lifeline, a mother-to-mother podcast. I'm Mimi.
And I'm Dobra, and together we are your hosts. In this mother-to-mother podcast, you will meet women sharing their stories of struggle, triumph, and hope. Our aim is to ensure that no woman ever feels alone.
Through their brave storytelling, these women become lifelines for others on their own journeys. So join us as we dive into the incredible stories that inspire and empower.
Welcome to Spotlight, where your story becomes a lifeline.
Thank you to our sponsor, Courierpoint, for sponsoring this month's episode. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe. Every subscription helps our podcast reach more people and allows us to continue supporting women by validating their experiences, empowering their voices, and spreading awareness. And make sure to stick around till the end to hear how Tsippy has taken her experience and built the most incredible career as a birth trauma practitioner, and her insights and awareness that she brings are truly invaluable.
Welcome back to Spotlight. Today we have Tsippy Kraus with us in the studio, and for those who don't know her, she is a childbirth educator, and she's here to share her personal story and what led her into the important field, as well as childbirth educating, into being a birth trauma practitioner. Birth and pregnancy trauma, however big, small, or seemingly tiny, is real, and we're here to acknowledge and validate everyone who's experienced it or knows someone who has. So, welcome Tsippy. Before we dive in, can you just introduce yourself to our listeners, and then we're going to go to the beginning where your journey began.
Amazing. Thank you for having me here. I am first and foremost a mother of 7 gorgeous children, Blia and Hara.
Wow.
Yes, which started with quite a bang because my oldest are twins. And as you're going to hear soon, I had quite a journey in my pregnancy and my birth with them. And that's what I'm going to share with everyone. And that's what led me to dive kind of into the world of childbirth, supporting women. And then slowly that route took me to birth trauma as well. So yeah, I'm excited to be here with you today.
So Tsippy, before we dive into your story, when we initially spoke, you mentioned it took a long time to put your story into words.
Yeah.
What finally made you ready to share this? Can you tell us a little bit of background?
Sure. So it's really interesting because I'm a talker.
Yeah.
It's the way I process things. It's the way I get through life. I talk to my family, to my friends, to myself, to anyone. That's what I do. I talk. But when it came to this pregnancy with my twins and it came to the birth, I shut down. I didn't talk about it. And for years, I didn't tell anyone what I went through. Sometimes they said, oh, it was a really hard pregnancy. It was a really hard experience in the hospital. But I never verbalized it. And
was it just so traumatic you didn't want to revisit it?
I think there was more than that because I wasn't suffering trauma symptoms. I just didn't want to talk. And I heard a lecture from Rabbi Tats, and it helped me put into perspective why I found it so hard to talk. It helped me absorb what was going on. And he was talking about words and how words confine things. Words make things finite. Words put things into a box. And when you feel something, it's kind of 3D. There's lots of emotions going on. Your brain starts to think and whir. And the minute you start to verbalize what you're feeling, it traps it into like a 2D situation. And I think that's what was going on for me. When I was just thinking and remembering, it was really massive. And I think that I felt that if I confine it into words, all of a sudden I lose some of that massiveness of it, that depth of what I went through. And this is something I hear a lot when I'm talking to women about birth trauma. Either they feel that what they've been through is too petty to come and talk to me about, or they find it hard to verbalize what they've gone through. And it's sometimes we listen to something and we don't hear the magnitude of what's going on in the words, but more in the feeling and the emotion. And what it made me realize is, number one, verbalizing things means that we are lessening the drama. we're lessening what went on, which is good. So talking about what you've been through will help you absorb it, will help you get through it, will help you get over it, will help you take it from this massive whirl of emotions into words. I can now deal with it. But what it also means is you have to acknowledge that even if what you've been through or what someone has experienced doesn't sound massive to someone else, it can feel very big to you. And like I say again, when I do trauma work, people sometimes feel that they're not, it's not legitimate what they've gone through. But if it feels big, it is big, even if it doesn't sound it. And I was once listening to a podcast and someone was telling a story of what they went through. And she was talking and I could hear it didn't sound very big. It didn't sound very massive. And I could hear the presenter was trying to draw out of her and she was trying to express it with different words. She wasn't getting enough words to say what you could hear she was feeling. The feeling was so much bigger than what was coming through. It didn't translate well into a dramatic experience, but it really was a massive feeling. And I think that for me, hearing that helped me understand why when I put it into words, it will then just become something that happened rather than this big impact that it had on my life. However, I'm 18 years down the line now, and I'm happy to share what I went through, which was massive for me, but also is interesting. It was an experience that has lots of different parts to it: emotional, funny, serious. Lots of different feelings and thoughts went into it.
And I feel like so many people can connect to that. You know, anything that they've gone through in their life. And then suddenly, like, you know, a hard pregnancy, and you know that person, the next person's been through something so much harder, and you're like,
true,
yeah, whatever, it was just a hard pregnancy. You know, you have it so much worse. You're like on a drip in hospital, right? That doesn't mean that your pregnancy wasn't hard.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you just can't verbalize it. You went through a really difficult time. Mm-hmm. Someone goes through a really difficult time, but they're just, it doesn't come out the same. You know?
No. And I think that's we also have to learn to listen to people, to listen to what they're not saying.
That's so true.
And to listen to what they're feeling rather than what the actual words that come out. A hard pregnancy, listen to what the hardness was, and just be sympathetic and empathetic to them.
So would you say that because of this, what happened to you, it was a big contributing factor to you going into what you're doing now?
100%. Okay, so let me start. Yeah. So, Baruch Hashem, thank God, 18 years ago, I found myself pregnant with twins. I was living in Israel, not much family support there. And I was going to be coming back to London to have the babies. And it was super exciting, but also very overwhelming. They were my first. Pregnancy is pregnancy, lots of throwing up and different sorts of feelings going on through there. And it was really when I went to my 20-week scan, it's called in Israel the Skirat Marachot, the big exploratory scan. That I was sitting there and they looked at my, they scanned the babies and they said, okay, twin 1, everything's okay, twin 2. And then he went silent. And it was this jolly American who was scanning. And all of a sudden he went silent and he said, okay, I see something on the screen. It could be something. It could be nothing.
Can I just take you back a second?
Yeah.
Was that the first time even that you heard that it was twins?
No.
You knew it was twins?
We'd had already a previous scan.
Okay.
So I knew it was twins. But all of a sudden it was like, okay, there's this moment that is changing everything. He said, he stopped talking. He said, okay, go and see your obstetrician. Goodbye.
And even just then, you had a naivety of some sort, going into pregnancy. It's your first pregnancy.
Exactly.
And everything is so exciting. And I'm sure you had all those dreams and everything along with a first pregnancy and excitement of becoming parents, and you're alone. How did you feel when he said that? What were your first thoughts?
So, I mean, there's shock because you don't expect. You're sitting there, and as well, he was such a fun American guy that he was chatting and jolly, and the shift the minute he was concerned was what stuck with me. However, I'm an optimist. I always think, okay, fine, he said that. Someone else will tell me something else. It's fine. Everything will be okay. Like I don't sit with negativity too long.
That was your first reaction, to be optimistic?
I straight away thought, okay, I'll go to my obstetrician and they'll tell me something. They'll tell me everything's okay. It's fine. I mean, obviously I had like a little bit of worry inside, but I thought I'll go to the next person.
And you were with your husband?
It's fine. I was with my husband.
And he was the same?
You'll have to ask him.
Get the husband on.
He has his own journey as well,
yeah.
his own experience,
Yeah.
and I can't talk for him. I can tell you how he supported me, but
Yes,
I
we'd love
can't
to hear
tell
that.
you.
Yeah.
I can't tell you his emotions.
We
and
do
his
have
feelings.
husbands listening to the podcast, by the way.
Okay.
So
Okay. So the next day we had an appointment with our obstetrician, and she wasn't the warmest. She heard what the sonographer had said, and I thought she'd say, yeah, don't worry, it's fine. And she said, okay, I can arrange for some counselling for you. And I was like, what? 1 second. You're meant to tell me he always does that. It's fine. It'll be okay. You're not meant to tell me we can arrange counselling for you. I said, no counselling, thank you. Well, it will be fine. And we left that appointment. And we went straight in our taxi to a big tzaddik, Rav Chaim Pinchas Steinberg, Zatzal. And we knocked on his door, and they let us come in, and we just stood there, and we were both crying. And he was so kind and gentle, and he gave me a bracha, he gave me a blessing. He said he should be all right. Now, I hadn't found out what I was having.
ooh, gender reveal.
Exactly, literally. I hadn't found out what I was having. So he said he should be all right. And I knew that they weren't differentiating between one twin and the other. They weren't saying, okay, they didn't find a way to differentiate. So in my mind, I decided that they're both the same gender and they must both be boys. So from then on, I knew I'm having twin boys. That was it. And he also told me to go and speak to his wife, the Rebbitzin, and get a bracha from her, get a blessing from her. And she made me promise that when the babies were born and they were healthy, I'll come back to her with the twins and introduce them to her. And I did. Just,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
I love that. Can we just zoom in on that support and love that you got from people that didn't even know you, people that didn't know you, but
They
who
cared.
They care so much about every single Jew,
Yeah.
as if they are their child. And that must have been such a hug.
It really was. And I really, really felt that they were there for me and we weren't alone.
It's reassurance.
Yeah.
A lot of reassurance after
Yeah.
that.
Did
And
that, do you
that's what I
feel that
lived
carried
with.
you? Yeah.
100%. And then my husband is also, he's a Belzer. So he wants to go into the Belzer Rebbe, and we went in as well for a bracha. And I really do feel like all of these blessings, they carried me through the pregnancy, and they have carried my twins through all their years as well. And I know they're my children, but there really is something special about them. Everywhere that they go, people love the Kraus twins. And I always feel it's all the tefillas, all the davening, all the brachas that we got definitely carry them through still day to day. So for me, that was real strength, and it's what kept me going, because the rest of the pregnancy was quite long. As I say, I was living in Israel. I was alone. I would go often to the Koisel, to daven, often spend nights just sitting on I remember in Israel, my pink couch I had, just praying the whole night. I had nothing else to do. I wasn't working at the time, and I was going to lots of different appointments, and that's all I could do.
How are your symptoms at this point?
Normal pregnancy, probably worse, but it was my first, and I don't dwell on things a lot. So I was throwing up, that's fine. I was throwing up like that. Doesn't come back to me as being overwhelming. Yeah, I had at one point, my heart was hurting. They said you've got fluid around the heart, but we dealt with it. That for me wasn't massive.
What were the concerns that you were worried about? What were the hospital worried about?
There was an illness that they were concerned about, but it was so 50-50. It was like either he is severely ill or he is fine.
Right.
There was no grades in between. So it was all or nothing. But the problem was that as they were developing, symptoms were the growth of the development was in sync with what they were worried about. So one baby was growing more and the other was taking its time to grow. So it was a much smaller baby.
Which I believe is a very normal thing with twins.
Exactly.
And are they like that in life now? One taller, one smaller?
Not anymore, but there was a time when one was a bit bigger and one was smaller, and when they were born, one was bigger and one was smaller. So we'll go into that.
Yeah,
soon.
from my limited understanding is some takes more, some takes less. And
Exactly.
it's a normal thing.
So it could have been nothing, even with these symptoms, or it
Yes.
could have been an illness. So everything was very much yes or no, and we wouldn't know until they were born.
And you were going to live through that from 5 months to 9 months with that unknown.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it became worse as we came back to London. We came back for I think it was September time, and they were due December. And we kept on going in for appointments, and they were like, well, it all fits in with the diagnosis, because they kept on calling it a diagnosis. I'm like, it's not a diagnosis, it's a suspicion. We don't know yet. They're like, oh yeah. And then they changed their words, but I would always have a new doctor to see, and they would again keep on saying, so with the diagnosis, I said, no, it's not a diagnosis. And then one doctor said, well, you can see that one baby's growing more, one baby's smaller. If you wanted to abort, we would understand. And I looked at that doctor like they were absolutely crazy. Why on earth? Like it didn't even come into our psyche. And then we did have one doctor who was just so realistic and just laid everything on the table for us and said, it's very, like you're saying, it's very normal for one twin to be bigger and one twin to be smaller. We have no reason to suspect, besides for that one scan, that the baby is ill. Don't worry so much. And I wish I could have had a little bit more of that. And I wish that professionals out there would know the power of their words, because you can so easily calm a person down, and it didn't help for me to be nervous. So the power of her words just calming me down and helping me put things into perspective was really, really important.
Can I stop you here, just whilst you're in this space?
Yeah.
Whilst you're living in that moment.
Yeah.
If there's someone out there right now who is going through the same thing, and she's just been told something, it's just a suspicion, it's not for real, like we don't know for sure, but can you talk to that person right now and give them maybe some encouragement?
My encouragement usually comes from more the spiritual side.
And that's okay, because that's you.
Yeah. And that's what I took strength from. That until something is real, it's not real yet. And we always have a power to pray. And we are supported and backed by really holy people around us, and go and speak to them and gain strength and know that, number one, everything can be okay. And we can always also, we can grow from any situation. So even if things don't turn out all right, and they will for some and they won't for others, all right can look very different for different people. So we will always as well be able to take our situation and look back afterwards and realize why it was necessary for us. Little silly things help me keep going. So the brother who's one below me, 6 years below me, we have a very similar sense of humor. He didn't know I was having twins, but he had found on YouTube, it was like the birth then of YouTube. Remember, these were the days before smartphones. I had no internet. I wasn't Googling symptoms. Whatever I knew was from the doctors. My brother came over to me one day with a clip on YouTube, and I actually looked it up this morning. It's still there. Everything stays. You put something on YouTube, it's there forever, because this was 18 years ago, and it's hysterical. It was a video, a pretend video of twins in the womb. He didn't know I was having twins. And one of them is holding the umbilical cord like a microphone. And he's singing the song, The Final Countdown, which I would sing it if I could now, but I'm not going to. And he was singing it really, really loud. And the other twin was like, can you be quiet? You're annoying me here. And then he started singing it again. And I was just picturing these twin boys inside me, just winding each other up. And literally that is my twin boys. It is hysterical. And whenever I was going through hearing something that was a bit overwhelming, I'd start singing to myself with my husband, The Final Countdown. And we just burst out laughing every time.
I love that.
Yeah. So it's these silly little things that can just keep you going. So that was a real a boost for me.
So when you had the twins, he must have been laughing away as well.
I think so. Yeah. I can't even remember, but I remember telling him, you don't even know what you did for me. Yeah. You don't. And we've got a similar humour, so it worked out.
But it's just what you needed right then.
Literally, it kept us going. My pregnancy continued, going in for scans, and then I went in once. I was going to continue going shopping, so I actually went in with my mother instead of with my husband that time. It was just a normal checkup. I was just going to have my urine tested.
Your mother knew about
my
the
mother
situation?
knew. My mother knew. Yeah, we had gained a lot of support from both my parents and my in-laws at the time, who live in Switzerland. So from afar, they were really supporting us. And we went in together, and I had my blood pressure tested, and they were like, oh, it's slightly raised. Nothing concerning, but slightly raised. And then they tested the urine, as they do. And they said, there's protein in the urine. We're not happy. We think you might be starting with preeclampsia. We want you to stay in.
What are the symptoms for preeclampsia?
So the most telling symptoms are raised blood pressure, protein in the urine. Once it becomes very severe, or as it's becoming to a point where it's getting more dangerous, is you might see swollen extremities like fingers and feet, and then very severe headaches. So everyone just look out for these signs. Severe headaches, seeing stars, that means going to hospital now, because that's really severe. That's eclampsia or HELP syndrome rather than preeclampsia. Preeclampsia means looking for the signs, and it's a dangerous illness, because if the body does get to the point where they actually have eclampsia or HELPs, it starts to shut down, or the organs start to shut down, and the only way to kind of relieve it is to deliver the baby or babies, but the body's not always well enough to deliver. So it's a very, very dangerous illness. I didn't realize the magnitude at the time, and I didn't really believe I had it, because my blood pressure was not that high. So I was kind of like, really? Seriously, do I have it? I said, you know what? Let me go home tonight. My dad's a paramedic. He'd been on Hatsala for years. I said, he can keep an eye on my blood pressure. I'll come back in tomorrow. So they said, okay. And not realizing how severe it was, we carried on. We were in UCLH, so we carried on to Tottenham Court Road, and we went shopping. I had to buy some stuff for my babies. We went into Mothercare at the time. I don't know who remembers Mothercare. Yeah, the best baby shop. Where are you? Yeah. And I loved their range of baby grows. They had 0 to 3. Baby grows or stretchies for Americans. And then they had, below that, they had newborn. And then below that, they even had, like, going down in sizes. They had early baby, and then they had tiny baby. Now, at this point, I have quite a big stomach. I'm having twins. Even though they were small, my stomach was quite massive. And I went and looked for the tiniest baby grows, because they're measuring my babies very small at this point in time. And I went to the desk with these early baby grows. And the lady at the desk looked at my stomach, and she looked at the baby grows.
Just imagining this.
And she looked at my stomach, and she looked at the baby grows, and she said, you know that these are for very small babies? I said, yes. And I brought them and I walked out, and I just burst out laughing. And I'll never forget her face. Anyway, went home, came back to hospital the next day, and they said, no, we're not happy to let you go. We want you to stay. The only problem is we don't have a bed for you. I said, okay. We're going to look for a bed. And they passed me from nurse to nurse to nurse. Like, I was literally like, they were handing me around because they didn't have space for me, but they wanted me to stay in. So finally it was a male Lebanese nurse who was really nice. He came over to me and he said, okay, we have a bed for you in the ward that you want to be in. But if you don't sit on it, it's going to go. So run. And that was me with, like, my massive stomach, high blood pressure, running to the wards. And I got to that bed and I sat on it, and I'm like puffing and panting and puffing and panting. And then another nurse comes over to me. We're really sorry, darling, but we need this bed for someone else. I'm like, no. I'm quite high risk. I need this bed. She said, no. I'm sorry. Someone's more high risk than you. We need this bed for you. So there went my bed. And then they did find me a bed, but it was on the postnatal or postpartum ward for people who had complications. So I'm admitted to a ward where there is mothers and babies, but everyone there is there for a reason, because they can't go home, because there are complications going on. So fine, I get my bed. Officially, I have high blood pressure. I'm quite high risk. We're worried about my baby. And I settle down. I close my curtain. I lie back. I think, okay, I'm going to rest. I'm going to sleep. All of a sudden, whip, my curtain's opened. I'm like, sorry? Open curtain policy. I said, can I not just have some privacy? I mean, the ward was quite busy and full. Nope, it's for the safety of mother and baby. I said, but I'm not yet a mother. I don't yet have babies. Can I have my curtains closed? Nope. That was it. There went my privacy. So I'm lying down in bed with lots of other people on the wards. And there's a couple of them that I remember quite distinctly. So at that point, I'm quite emotional. I think that I was even crying, that I had to stay in hospital overnight. I just wanted to go back. I just didn't want to be there. It was quite a lot going on. And this lady next to me started talking to me, and she was like, why are you so upset? What's going on? I said, I don't want to be here. I just want to be home.
Yeah, it doesn't help as well that you're on a ward with mothers who've had
exactly
babies.
And then it gets worse, because she said to me, oh, like, what's wrong? Why are you here? I said, well, I'm having twins and they're worried. She said, oh, I just gave birth to twins and one didn't survive, and I'm waiting to hear about the other one. And I was like, whoa. It made me feel guilty. Like, I'm crying because I want to go home, but my babies are still well. And
did it give you also a bit of anxiety?
Of course, what will happen to my babies?
Yeah.
And here they are keeping me in because they're worried about my blood pressure, whereas this is definitely not helping my blood pressure. So I felt super guilty for like even showing that I'm upset to be in hospital, because thank God I still have healthy babies. So that was like shock number one. So I'm settling there, and I have very nice friends, families that come and visit. I was there for a couple of days. And throughout this time, there was this lady in the ward opposite. I can still picture it. So 18 years ago, I can still picture it. And she kept on going out for smoking breaks. And she was there with her baby, who was crying on and off. And her partner kept on coming every day from 9 in the morning till 4 o'clock. Those were visiting hours. And he was walking around and talking and holding the baby and talking. And she kept on going out for her breaks. And I was there now for a couple of days. They were monitoring my blood pressure, monitoring my urine, and telling me that they kind of think it's time for me to think about a C-section, because they don't want me to have a natural birth because the babies just seem too small, and they don't want me to go on much longer because of my preeclampsia.
How far along were you at this point?
I was about 35 weeks.
Which is good for twins.
It's okay. It was still called premature.
Okay.
Full term is 37, 38 weeks for twins. So it was still called premature, and they were quite small, but it wasn't dangerous. I didn't feel like we were in danger zone 27 or 28 weeks, which would be a lot more nerve-wracking. So they kept on telling me, okay, it might be tomorrow, your cesarean, it might be every day was kind of, we were waiting for that. So this guy across, this partner, going back to this partner, he came over to me and he was talking to me. And then one day he came over to me, he said, have you seen how much I'm here for this little girl? Like, I love my little girl. I'll do anything for her. She's my life. And she's got such a massive family. My partner over there, she's got 4 from another marriage, and I've got 3 from another. I mean, nobody talks to each other, but this little girl's got massive supportive family. We love her. But I'm in a bit of a bind, because, they're accusing me of abusing another child, my 4-year-old. And I admit I did that. And now they think that I've been abusing this child already in the womb. And it's not true. I wouldn't do anything to this little girl. If this little girl would ask me for 10 quid, I'll put my hand in my back pocket and I'll give it her. I don't even know where I'll get it from. I'll just give it her. Anyway, that's, by the way, become a motto of our family. Like, my husband, whenever the kids ask us money, he's like, I'll put my hand in my back pocket and I'll give it her. But
I can just imagine you standing there with like your mouth wide open, like, what do I say to this guy?
I was sitting there in my bed with open curtain policy with this guy there from 9 in the morning till 4 every day. And I hear that he is an abuser.
An abuser, wow.
And he says, so they're not letting me go home with my partner. And she has to go to court tomorrow to see if I'm allowed to go home with her or where she's going to go from here.
I love the way he openly admits that,
Yeah, but not this girl. Only his 4-year-old son. Not this girl. As if it makes it better.
Yeah.
So then he said to me, would you come with me to court to testify how supportive of a dad I've been to this little girl? Because you see, I would do anything for her. And I looked at him and I said, I'm having twins. I don't think I'm in any situation to come to court. Better ask one of the nurses here. And I called over the nurse and I said to her, I will not stay in this ward for one more night. You get me out of here tonight or I am leaving. And they do have private rooms there. And they kept on saying to me, we can't give you the private room because it's only for women who've already had babies, who've already given birth. I said, I will have that private room or I'm leaving. What I hadn't mentioned was I'd started saying that they wanted to give me a cesarean. So for the last couple of nights before this incident, they'd been telling me, okay, your cesarean will be tomorrow. Prepare for it. You have to fast. You have to fast 12 hours beforehand. So I was fasting the whole evening. I'm pregnant with twins. Love food. I get very hungry. I was allowed to have a little bit of water, but I had to fast the whole night. And then it would come to like 10 o'clock in the morning and they'd say, sorry, but we've got someone else who's more of an emergency than you. Your cesarean's not happening today. And then the next day, same thing would happen. So this was like on day 3 of them telling me I'm having a cesarean and I haven't had one yet. And then I've got this guy as well.
So you've like fasted for 3 nights, basically.
Yeah.
With an abuser in the room.
Yeah. I was like, this is it. This is it. I'm just not having this anymore. And they actually found me a room for that night. And they told me, okay, your cesarean will really be tomorrow. And came the next day. It didn't seem like the cesarean was happening. And my husband said to me, okay, he'd been coming and going. He can tell you exactly how long it takes to get from Brent Cross Station to Tottenham Court Road and to Goodge Street, which one is better after arriving at the station and then having to walk to the hospital. Like, he was doing this backwards and forwards the whole time because he couldn't stay there with me, but he could be there for visiting hours. So I finally have my own room. And my husband says to me, okay, I'm going now. I need to just have a shower. Like, he'd been backwards and forwards. I'm going having a shower. I'll come back in a couple of hours. You're all right? My mum was with me. I said, it's fine, not a problem. Anyway, of course, as he leaves, and this time he went by taxi and he was stuck in the one-way system. I don't even actually, maybe he went by train. I can't remember. Either way, he was stuck somewhere where he couldn't get back easily. They said, right, we're taking you down after your C-section. I'm like, no, you can't. My husband's not here. They said, is he the surgeon? I said, no. Then we don't need him. I'm like, I know, but I need him. And it's really interesting because he doesn't love hospitals. It's not like he's a massive medical advocate for me, but I really needed him. I just felt like this was something we've been in together and I don't want to be alone. They said, we're taking you down. We'll try and get hold of him. We'll try and get him back here. They took me down into the theatre, got me all ready. And all of a sudden I heard my husband calling from outside, I'm here. And I'm like, okay, you can go ahead now. And I was like sitting there and I was saying to him. And I was like, and they said, can you stop praying and breathe already? And they stuck the anesthetic in me. And they started the operation. And there was a lot as well to letting go of a natural birth and ending up with a C-section. I'd gone to classes and I loved my classes. I really, really did. And I was all psyched up for a natural birth. And I was so excited to be doing a twin natural birth because, like, if you're not going to do it with one, let's do it with twins. And I was letting go of that hope and dream of a natural birth, a natural twin birth. So I knew that I wouldn't yet know whether my baby was well because they told me it will take time for the testing after birth to be done to know. Okay. It wasn't something we were going to see immediately. It's not something physical that you're going to see on the baby. So I knew that wasn't going to be imminent. But again, it was letting go of so many things. Like I said, it was letting go of a natural childbirth. It was letting go of a pity in her ben because these were my oldest. I knew they were going to be boys. And that would have meant a pity in her ben. And it was going through an operation. And I remember one of the doctors, when they were talking medical history, I said, not even a filling. Like, that's how little medical intervention I'd had in my life. So it was all, this was a big operation I was coming into. So it was a lot going on. But I stopped praying. I breathed. And they started. And I remember very, very quickly, they said, twin one is out and it's a boy. And they brought twin number one over to me. I could see him. And then they went to take him off to the incubator.
What was your first reaction?
I missed out, actually, before that even. I missed out. Part of the reason why they kept on pushing off my cesarean was we have now the surgeons ready, but we don't have 2 incubators ready. We don't have space in the NICU for 2 babies. So it wasn't just that they had to do my operation. They were very concerned about the babies. We need 2 incubators ready for 2 babies that might not be well. Don't know why they thought the second one, but it was a premature twin birth. So there was we need the 2 incubators. In my room, in my surgery room, there were 2 incubators ready for my babies.
And that alone, them saying that must have had a big effect on you.
Yeah, so that was quite big. So baby number 1 is out. I've seen my little baby, precious. I think I was crying. I'm sure I was crying.
Were you able to have a bit of skin to skin?
No. Oh. No, they had to take the baby straight to the incubator.
Was that hard?
Not yet. Okay. Later came the bit when I realised I'm not with my babies. So baby
number 1. I guess you had never been through another childbirth before and this was all you had known.
Yeah.
So
I was just grateful. Yeah. He was out. He was well. He was a boy. I mean, well for the moment, breathing.
There was just relief.
Relief.
Okay.
Breathing straight away, which was also for me like, hear that cry. He cried. Amazing. Into the incubator. Baby number 2 delivered a boy. They brought him to see me. They actually also, my husband wasn't in the room with me because he had come a little bit late. He was just by the door. And they brought both babies over to my husband as well, which was really important for me and for him. That was really kind of them. And baby number 2, born a boy, breathing, crying, into the incubators. And then they completed my cesarean. I can't remember. Took me to the recovery room and then up to the wards. And for me, this was really, really hard. I was up in the wards, recovering from a cesarean, looking around at mothers with their babies, and I'm here alone without my babies. My husband was there. I said, just go down to the babies and check that they're all right, check that they're okay. I was also very into giving them touch, making sure that they knew that we're there for them, having human touch, having parents touch, talking, nor I just wanted them to know we're their parents and we're there. So my husband went down, and remember, no smartphones, no pictures. And very kindly, I don't know who it was, I've got no idea, but there's a professional apparently at that time who went around and took pictures of babies, newborns in their incubators. I don't know exactly how it happened, but he came back up with 2 pictures for me, one of each baby. And I was just like, my babies. It was just overwhelming and amazing. And they were on lots of different Ys and tubes, but they were breathing and they were well for the moment and they were okay. One was born 2 kilo 2 and one was born 1 kilo 4. So there's quite a discrepancy in their weight, and 1 kilo 4 is quite small, but not scarily dangerously small. So that night I was alone. It was a really hard night to be alone without my babies. I kept on looking at their pictures.
We'll be right back to this episode. Hi, I'm Danielle, a founder of Mother to Mother, an organization that supports and empowers women on their motherhood journey. We offer a wide range of services to make sure that every mother can thrive. From emotional support services to mother and baby groups, practical help, health information, a community kitchen, and much more. Mother to Mother builds communities of women to support each other. By tuning into our podcast, you have joined the Mother to Mother family today. Welcome and enjoy the episode.
The next day, I made sure that until the catheter is out, you really can't move very much. So they made me do a little bit of walking before the catheter was out, just to make sure I could walk on my own 2 feet. Someone also took me down, I think it was my husband, in the wheelchair to see my babies. So that was, wow, I could see them. I could put my hand through the little incubator. One was actually in a hot cot, was taken out of the incubator very quickly, and the other one was in the incubator. And they were both in the same room, which I was lucky, because sometimes they put them in different rooms to be cared for by different nurses. My babies were born on a Wednesday. I went through this, going down to see them, coming back up to the wards for a couple of days. And by Friday, they said, great, you're fine, you're well, we can discharge you. So my babies were downstairs in not the NICU, but the special care unit. And I was nursing them directly and expressing for them. So one twin, the bigger twin, I was nursing directly. The smaller twin, they think was the one that had the suspicion of whatever illness this was. They didn't even have any identifying way of knowing that it really was twin 1 that they were suspicious about. But because it was smaller, they assumed that that was the baby that we were concerned about. And they didn't want me to feed him directly because they were scared of his stomach. They were scared it would cause some more issues. So I had to express for twin 1 and nurse directly to twin 2. They weren't even going to give twin 1 any formula, even if I wouldn't have enough milk, because they were worried about twin 1's stomach. So I was now in this rotation of constantly feeding and expressing. And I said, I can't go home if you're discharging me because my babies need my milk. So they gave me a little room next to, it's like a rooming in room, next to the special. It was the room for people who were nursing, trying to get their babies home. So I was able to stay in that room. It was a single room. My husband couldn't stay with me. Obviously, he was constantly coming and helping and bringing and doing everything, but he couldn't stay there with me. So it was Friday. There was a Shalom Zacha to prepare. People had to bring me food to the hospital. Remember, I wasn't even living in London at the time, so I didn't have a massive support system. I had my family and some friends, but there weren't any big organizations who were helping me, sending food, doing. It was really just my family.
Can I cut you here? This is I'm sitting here, and the immense appreciation to organizations nowadays, particularly Mother to Mother, who literally, they have bespoke packages for women that are in hospital. They have FLOs that are trained, and I know that you've done training specifically for our FLOs in Mother to Mother.
I've given them trauma training.
You've given them trauma training, and so they do that. They know how to recognize trauma when they visit mums at home. But for this case alone, then nowadays we've got Mother to Mother here in London, branching out into different places into London now, Baruch Hashem, and they are able to come to the hospital, give you food and help support physically as well as emotionally.
It makes you really appreciate Mother to Mother.
So grateful that now we have that.
And even there's now an organization that sets up Shalom Zacha. They provide all the dry goods and they set it up for you. So it was a short Friday where I had just been discharged, 2 days post C-section. My husband was having, and my family were having to set up a Shalom Zacha, bring me food to the hospital so I could stay there over Shabbos, be with my twins, and actually have something to eat because the hospital weren't going to provide anything. And I was just really vulnerable and worried and, constantly nursing and expressing for my twins. And then they told me, okay, so this is really the highest level care hospital for premature babies or for babies that we're concerned about. And thank God your babies don't need the highest level anymore. They're in the special care. They're not in intensive care. We need to save the space for new babies that might come in with severe concerns and worries. So we think that tomorrow on Saturday, we're going to be moving them, which is a lower level care because they don't need us anymore. I'm like, great, but not so great because it's Shabbos and I'm here in this hospital. And how do I navigate that? So I called my rabbi and he said, well, if they move them on Shabbos and you want to go with, the only way that that's halachically okay is if you go in the ambulance with them. So when I spoke to the hospital, they said, no, you can't go in the ambulance with them. There's no space. You'll have to go in a car behind. But my rabbi said, you can't follow in a car behind. That's not allowed. So that's how I came into Shabbos alone, because my family were at home having a Shalom Zacha for my twins, and I was in a room that could only have one person staying there. Without any medical care for myself, I'm 2 days after a cesarean, worried that my twins, who I'm nursing, would move without me. That Friday night was probably the worst Friday night of my life. I just felt like everyone is celebrating at home. My first simcha. And I'm here in hospital with my babies, still not knowing if one was well. Still not knowing if he would be healthy because we were waiting on the test. Everything was showing good signs, but remember, I couldn't Google, I couldn't check what are the symptoms, what are the signs of what we were concerned about. So I was always just waiting for the doctors to report. Doctors only come once a day. Every time they came, they said, he looks okay, but we've got to wait for the test. He looks okay, we've got to wait for the test. Thankfully, they decided not to move the babies. I think, well, we didn't have space for my babies, so that was also another little hug from Hashem.
When did you know that? When did they come to you and say, actually, we're not going to?
Sometime on Shabbos, I can't remember when. But the whole day I was waiting for this move.
Yeah.
And my brother, very kindly, my youngest brother, walked from Golders Green to the Royal Free because he knew that if my babies were there and they were alone, I would want someone to be with them. So he went just to check. That was really nice. But my husband came Motzei Shabbos with my in-laws to the hospital to see my babies and to see me, of course. And I pulled him into like the tiny little kitchen there, and I just burst out crying. And I'm not the biggest crier. And he saw me and he was like, what's the matter? I'm like, nothing. But I was just so lonely. And there was so much that was dependent on me, especially the nursing and the expressing. And I was so alone. And it was just a horrible Shabbos. Probably the worst Shabbos of my life.
Wow. Did you speak to anybody else who maybe had a set of twins to get some advice, or you didn't know anybody?
Very cut off. We had no internet. I wasn't living in London. I had no wider support system than my family and close friends.
You were so young.
I was young. There were other families there with twins as well. There was another non-Jewish lady there, and I remember she was taking her twins home alone, and I said, like, have you got family support? Oh, my mum-in-law will come once a week to help. So I just felt grateful for what I had. I just felt like I'm going home to a full network of support. So I was really grateful. I was also in a massive spiritual high. I had a little bit of reading material. I think I had a DVD player with some DVDs, but not much more than that. So I had my Tehillim, and I used to sit there by the expressing machine, bleeding into the milk and davening. And that kept me going. And I look back, and that's what I hold on to, because I've never been able to reach such a spiritual high as I did then, because that's all I had. And I remember one day I just wasn't getting milk. I was bleeding. I just wasn't getting any milk. And I decided, you know what? This is not really my responsibility. And I remember speaking to Hashem, and I said, Hashem, you have given me these twins. You have decided that we're going to be worried about them. You have decided what milk you're going to give me. It's up to you now to feed them. And I just literally remember like a weight rolling off my shoulders. It's not all on me. I have someone else in this. I'm not alone. And I don't even remember how I got through, but we did it. Yeah. And I can't say I'm there anymore. I'm not on that spiritual high anymore. But at that point, that's what I had.
But that same Hashem gives you the strength at the times that you need it.
Yeah.
And you held on to that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So the next week, Shabbos came. And they said to me, well, actually, the room that you're sleeping in we need for another lady who's trying to get her babies to go home. So she's going to need that room for the weekend.
So you still don't know the results, and
No.
the babies are making good progress?
Yes, thank you actually for asking about that. They were doing really well. They were gaining weight. They were doing everything they should be doing, but the results hadn't come back yet. So I still couldn't nurse directly, and I still was in limbo. And
Yeah,
that
you still
unknown
have
is
that.
often
It's a killer.
the hardest. I remember one time a doctor came and I was hoping for good results, and she didn't even tell me bad results because there wasn't any bad results, but she couldn't give me results. And that was a real letdown because I'd been waiting to speak to her and hoping she'll give me the results. And sometimes just like, I'm saying not even negative, but just not getting an answer is harder than anything. And I remember finding that really, really hard. And then another brother, I have five brothers. Another brother came and he'd come over in a motorbike and he was wearing his full motorbike gear with his helmet, holding his helmet. And that was another lighthearted moment. And that just helped me come out as well of like this low. So it's these little moments that just keep you going. Anyway, next Shabbos arrived. I had to vacate the room and go home. And you would think that's easier because I'm home. But remember, I'm still having to nurse for my children.
You were around much more support, people that can help you. It's a different ballgame.
It was even harder.
Oh, really?
Of that, yeah, because of the expressing. So by now, we'd given already twin to a bottle. So I knew that some of the pressure is off.
You came home with the babies?
No, the babies were still there, but I had to leave for Shabbos.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, not yet.
No,
Not yet. Babies
is-
are not discharged.
That's much harder.
Exactly.
Oh, of course.
So I wasn't allowed to stay in that room. I didn't have autonomy on that room. It wasn't just a room for me. It was a room for anyone who's trying to get their babies out of special care. So I was lucky I even had it for the week, and then they wanted me to leave it for another lady. So I had to leave my babies there, and I had to come home. And again, twin one can't have formula. So I had to be expressing for this baby. So we created a cycle of a taxi company coming every 3 hours to fetch a bottle of milk, take it into hospital. Now, I knew that a hospital is very good when it comes to medical situations, but not always so reliable with communication. And I was worried that he'd drop the milk off at some unknown point at the front of the hospital and that it would never make it into my babies. So I made the nurses send me a fax every time they received that milk. And I knew if I wouldn't receive that fax, I'm getting in a taxi and I'm going to hospital to go and
For
feed my
those
babies.
who don't know what a fax is, Google it.
Again, it shows my
Google it.
age. Shows my age, but I would wait.
And
every
you
3
weren't able to go in the morning and stay there for the day? Okay.
I'm
very
post
far.
C-section.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah,
walk
you
an
can't.
hour and a half to get there.
Wow.
Who thought of that system?
Well, altogether, I think
Yeah.
they just came up with it.
Jesus.
That's the only thing that there was. And remember,
Otherwise, your baby's not going to have milk.
Yeah.
And the nurses didn't talk to you about that? Or
So at one point they said to me, I think this was a little bit later, and they said, listen, you're just not providing us with enough milk. Your baby is going to starve. We would like to give it donor milk, which means through somebody who's expressed milk and donated it. But there's no Jewish donor banks. Anyone wants to set something up in London, please set up a kosher Jewish donor milk bank. It's not easy because it has to go through a lot of testing processes to make sure there's no viruses. But there was only this non-Jewish donor bank available. And remember, I was on this very spiritual high, and I said, my baby has gone through so much. There's been so many prayers for this baby. It's not having non-Jewish milk. I'm just not going to allow that. So again, I was just expressing as much as I could, and we did manage to avoid that, and I'm just so grateful. And I don't know how. I really don't know how we did that. We managed to avoid that.
How long was this process, this time frame that he was in the hospital and you were home?
It was just over Shabbos.
Just over Shabbos.
Just over
so
Shabbos.
just a couple of days.
But it was a Shabbos that I literally just cried the whole way through.
Yeah.
Everyone thought, oh, amazing, you're home. No, I just cried. I just wanted to be back with my babies. It was a really tough one. And also, I'd become so close to my babies. I mean, anyone, you have a newborn baby. I knew every facial expression. All I was doing the whole time was just holding, touching, talking. I'd been really close to them. So to leave them for a whole Shabbos was really hard.
Yeah.
But I knew they were in good care and they were being looked after. I remember all my discussions with the nurses. I was sitting there for hours. I remember one of them, she was Irish. She was called Morag. And she was so kind and so nice. I remember saying to her, has a nurse ever dropped a baby? She said, oh no, lovey, we would never drop a baby. I said, no, I know you would never, but has it ever? Like all these things came through my mind. They're such silly things, but this was a discussion.
No, it's your concern for your babies.
They were lovely.
It's
honestly,
the light-hearted moments like that when you create
the
a rapport
chats and the
with a
discussions.
nurse.
And I remember one nurse looked at me and she said, I'm not worried about you because you're going to go back to the Jewish community and they'll take care of you.
Oh, wow.
How beautiful is that?
Yeah. And another one said to me, let me tell you something. And this was a religious African-American nurse. So she had the spirituality to her and I liked that. And she said to me, twins are a blessing. It will only bring blessing into your home. And that really stayed with me. You can get chizuk, you can get strength from anyone.
100%.
And I mean, this was only the beginning. I then had to bring up twin boys. And every time
Where
they were
was she when you needed her?
Exactly. She sent me home. But every time
You
there was
come
a
back
challenge.
like 10 years later, like, hey, look at this.
Now look after them.
Yeah. And with all their breaks and their falls and everything. But I always thought to myself, it's true. They're a blessing in my home. So those things stayed with me. So again, it was another week, a very, very long week. But they were making really good progress. And then another Shabbos was coming, and this time they actually moved me into a bigger room, and my husband could stay with me. So that
you
was
were able
amazing.
to stay in hospital
I was,
next Shabbos.
yeah. So after Shabbos, I went back to hospital. I was able to stay there a whole week, and then stay there for Shabbos again.
Oh, okay. So kind of them.
So
Well, after 2 traumatic Shabboses in a
this was
row, that
like
is
a breath
relieving.
of fresh air that he was there with me, and we
Yeah.
were together that Shabbos, and it was
Yeah.
a beautiful Shabbos together. And they remember my twins were growing and they were stronger, and it was just nice to see their development. I'll also never forget my grandmother, who she died last year, and we were very, very close to her. Was a very proper German lady, always had her nails done, everything was always very proper, her lipstick. And she came in once to see my twins, and the little one was tiny, and when they're in an incubator, they only put them in a nappy. So he was wearing just a nappy, loads of wires coming out of him, things on his fingers, things on his toes. And just that day, his jaundice levels were quite high, so they put the blue light on him, and they had like a mask over his eyes. And I remember her looking in and saying, very sweet. And I thought, what, can she see a toe? I always laugh. They're like, very sweet child. And then they came over to me during the next week and they said, okay, we're ready to discharge twin 2. He's doing well. There's no reason for us to keep him. I said, okay, that's great. But how does that work? Because I'm still sleeping here in this little room. And my husband was coming and going, but he wasn't there constantly with me. And I can't send my baby home. I'm here in hospital. How do I look after one who's in my care and one who's in your care? So they said, okay, well, we'll wheel the bed into your room with you. And whenever you come to nurse the other baby, or you need to go to the toilet, you'll bring him in with you into the special care. Okay. So the first time I had to do that, I wheel this trolley with a baby in, like a cot with a baby, and I come into the special care and they're like, what on earth are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm coming to like look after my other baby. You can't bring a baby in here who's not under our care. I'm like, but you just discharged him a couple of hours ago. Yeah, but now we've got another baby in here. We can't be responsible for another baby, and you can't bring this baby in. It could bring viruses in. You can't. And I was like, what am I meant to do? I've got 2 babies to look after, and I can't leave one alone in the room in a hospital when I'm here. So I can't remember how we got through the next few hours. I do remember that the minute my husband came, I ran to the bathroom because I hadn't had a chance because I was the only one looking after him. But I think that then they said, okay, we'll actually discharge baby number 1 as well. But we won't send you out of the hospital. We're going to put you together with them in a unit where they look after you a little bit more intensely after birth.
But you're still waiting for the results. Is this the reason
results.
why they're not taking?
Yeah. Well, he was doing really well. He was also still tiny. He wasn't yet 2 kilo. He was still tiny. He hadn't yet hit his due date. So they also kind of wait for that. But there were really no concerns besides for these test results that we're waiting for. So they sent me up to that ward. And finally, I started to feel like a real mother. I had 2 cots next to me, 2 babies. And I was looking after them. And it was good memories there. And I think it was in that ward, in that unit, where they came to tell me that the test results have come through and everything's okay. Baruch Hashem. It was a real relief moment.
Wow.
And even though all the signs were pointing to him being healthy and well, it was just that,
You
like,
need that confirmation.
those months of holding it in and holding it in. And like I said, it was either all or nothing. It's not like, well, there are some slight problems. It was either he was going to be ill or he was going to be well. So it was now like these two complete, amazing children. And they really, really are. And they'll be so embarrassed if they hear this. They're 18. They're 18-year-old boys. They don't want to hear that they were cute and all of that. But it was just the biggest blessing that I had these two gorgeous boys.
How did you let go of all the pent up feelings that you had inside you?
It took time. It took enjoying my babies,
The
seeing
moment
them
that
grow.
the moment that they told you that everything's okay, did you cry from
Can I
that then?
tell you that I genuinely don't remember that moment? Is that
okay.
terrible?
No,
Does
that's
that
not
give
terrible.
like a real letdown to the end of this story?
Do you know, because
I
I'm
don't
sitting here at the
remember it.
end of my seat and I'm like listening to the story and I'm like, and what happens and what happens and what happens, and I know that they're going to be okay in the end because we've spoken already, but like I know it's going to be okay, but I'm in the moment, like that's me,
And
I'm
I'm
living
thinking
in the
back.
moment, and I'm like, and they're okay, and then you're like, whew.
I think it was because they were so unemotional and undramatic about everything that every day I would wait for the doctors to do their rounds, and every day I would say, have the test results come back yet? What test results?
Oh gosh.
And I'd be like, the results for my baby, because of the diagnosis. And I'm like, it's not a diagnosis. They were just so unemotional about it that when those results came back, it was not very dramatic. They're like, okay, so I think, if I remember, they were like, okay, the test results came back, everything's showing normal, nothing to worry about. So it was so undramatic for that on their part that it just happens. They were just
Because they're dealing with it all the time for this one, that one.
Yeah.
exactly, and they're just
So-
reading notes. They were never following through. It wasn't the same doctor.
Different
it was always a
shifts,
different one. Exactly.
100%. Yeah.
One thing I have to say is that anyone who has to be in a hospital with a child, with a baby, it's so important to be on top of things, because I would sit there through the doctor's rounds and I would listen to the doctor's recommendations, and I'd be there and I'd talk to the nurse and say, so can you carry it out? Oh yeah, we'll do it in a few hours. And then a few hours came and they weren't carrying out. And these recommendations meant that my babies were starting to move forwards, move out of the incubators, move into hot cots, move into regular cots, to go off the breather. Each step meant we were a step closer to coming home. And it was only because I was sitting there and actively pushing them to move to the next step that they were doing it as quickly as they were meant to. And I think we would have been there for a little bit longer had I not been there so often and been able to push for it. So that's why it really is
You
important
have to advocate for yourself.
You're the
Yeah.
child's
Exactly.
biggest advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your
Yeah.
own. And
And
your
your
own
own,
as
yeah,
well in
as well.
hospital. And this is what I teach. When I teach childbirth classes, it's all about you as yourself and your individual, and not about what's the general protocol. Listen to medical advice. It's really important. It protects you. It protects your baby, but also ask questions. And really make sure that what's going on is the right thing for you and for your baby and for whatever you're looking after.
How long later than after you received the all clear and everything was fine, how long later did it take for you to go home with both babies
It was
together?
very quick. When things move there, they move. When they decide your baby's fine, you're out. That's it.
Right.
So I can't even remember the timeline. I think I got a couple of days in that unit and then I was home.
Right.
So tell us how, I know that you do a lot of work within the childbirth world, exactly.
Yeah.
You are a childbirth educator, you are a birth trauma specialist. Tell us a little bit about that, just, briefly, how you got into that.
So when I was in hospital, I remember saying to myself, one day, when I am through this and through the hardest parts of bringing up twins, I want to do something to help women who are vulnerable during the time of childbirth. I didn't yet know what, but I knew something. I wanted to do something. And it was a few years later when I came across training for becoming a childbirth educator. It's something that I was excited about, I was passionate about. I started training to become a childbirth educator. Baruch Hashem, I had more children. I had positive experiences about my other births, some really, really good ones. And I started teaching. I've been teaching now for about 16 years. I teach in-person classes here in London. And I have also more recently set up an online course, particularly for Jewish couples, because I really feel that it's so important to have a resource out there for people to tap into wherever they are in the world, at whatever stage in the pregnancy, together with their husband if they want to, and have really good quality education. So that's available. I'm going to give a little plug here under
Please, yes.
birthjourneysonline.com. So
Birth Journey
www.birthjourneysonline.com. You can look it up and you can be in touch with me and ask me more questions. But it also led me more into the world of organizations and really feeling like I want to support women out there. And then it moved on to my becoming a founding member of Menucha, Menucha supports the mental health of women in London. We have a team of therapists, and it is an unbelievable organization that really holds people after birth. It's got very, very well-trained and specialized therapists to help women after birth if they're suffering, or in pregnancy, anytime perinatal, pre and postnatal support. In one of the meetings, we were talking about having a therapist train as a birth trauma practitioner, and like my bell started ringing, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. This was quite a few years ago, and I did start the training, and I have been now for the last few years a birth trauma release practitioner, working with Menucha and privately and on Zoom. I have clients all over the world, and it's unbelievable to see how they're able to move on from their traumatic experiences. And honestly, I wished I would have had it. Now it's kind of, I'm through it. I'm over it. I don't need that anymore, but I could have really done with it at the time.
And you trained mother to mother. You trained the FLOs, the family liaison officers, how to recognize
exactly
if, when they go into women's houses after birth, how to recognize if somebody has a birth story, just to listen to them, and then how to refer them on, which is such a powerful tool for our FLOs.
So it's a course I've put together, for doulas. I've now done training in a few different locations and online for doulas, for birth workers, to help them see the signs, understand what birth trauma is as well, and how it can manifest.
How can you define that? Because don't you find every woman, after they give birth, they do not stop talking about how the birth went for quite a few weeks? How do you see that line?
That's exactly the point. Those first few weeks, it's really good and important to talk. But if that continues after a few weeks and a woman can't let go of it, let go of their emotion that's attached to it. So they might continue talking about it, but if they still feel emotion rising, so teariness, panic attacks, racing heart,
so that's
avoidance, after the first few weeks or even the first couple of months, that's when you would say it wasn't just a traumatic birth, but we're also worried about the traumatic symptoms that are continuing afterwards. And I get loads of people saying to me, I had, my experience was really traumatic. What's the difference between, a traumatic experience and someone suffering with birth trauma? And it's really in the way that they're suffering, not in their story or their experience, which is what we said at the beginning.
Right.
It's not always about the big drama. It's about the emotion. It's not always about the story or the experience. And often someone who's had an intense experience, premature babies, C-section, people are more likely to allow them to be traumatized. But somebody who's had a much smaller experience, they're like, seriously, your baby's fine. Like, why can't you just get over it?
Yeah.
But it's not, like I say, it's not about the words. It's about the emotions. And if I can just close up with one other thought that I've had, and that really gives me strength. It's something I read many, many years ago, and I've been doing a lot more research into. It was something called the Holocaust gene. It was a study done by someone called Dr. Rachel Yehuda into the genetic makeup of people whose ancestors or grandparents had gone through the Holocaust, and how their actual epigenetics, the light switches of the genes, have changed because of what their grandparents went through. They are more prone to anxiety, to all sorts of different results because of what their grandparents went through, even though it never touched them physically. I found that fascinating. And if you do more research into epigenetics, you'll see that when someone goes through something, it can change the way that people react for generations. And again, I was looking into this, I found it fascinating, I found it interesting, but then you put it into the perspective of being a Jewish person. We know it. We know that when the Torah was written, it wasn't written as a storybook to tell us what was going on. It was to tell us of what the beginnings of our nation are and what has seeped down into us through our ancestors. So we look back at Avraham and his 10 tasks, the 10 challenges. It's not there just to tell us, oh, poor thing, look what he went through. It's how he got through it and what resources he used to get through it. They've now passed down to us. So if we look back at the mothers at the Emohais, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, they all went through their own challenges. Sarah struggled with infertility. Rivka had twins and her own struggles with her twins and not understanding them. Rachel gave over signs. She had so much strength within her to make sure that her sister wouldn't be publicly embarrassed. They all went through so much and we can relate to them, but we can also draw from them. So we know that we have it within our DNA and within our genes to come through all our challenges. And that, I hope, can give a woman or anyone going through something real strength to know that they're not the first, they're not the last, but they also have the ability and the support to get through it. Someone's been there and they've given you that strength. But more than that, once you are through it, then your strength that you've used and you've tapped into to get through it will now be passed down to your children and your grandchildren. They'll now have a much bigger wellspring of strength to tap into because of what you've done and what you've accomplished and what you've come through. And really, when we go through something, we have to use it to our benefit, and we have to use it for the greater good of everyone around us, including ourselves. So instead of looking at post-traumatic stress, we can think about post-traumatic growth. And it doesn't have to be massive. For me, it's amazing. It started me on a profession that I love and I enjoy and has given me so much in my life. But it can be something small, as in developing your relationship with your husband, or giving you more understanding of friends, or having a bigger connection with your children. It doesn't have to be massive. It can be something small, but that's your post-traumatic growth. So when you're going through something, tap into everything you need around you. The strength of our ancestors, the support systems that are on the ground. But once you've come through it, look at yourself and realize how you've grown and develop that, because that's what you're left with when you've gone through a challenge.
So now that we've come to the end of the story, Tsippy, I wanna go back to the beginning of this episode and just do a full circle. You were scared not scared, but you were hesitant to come on to speak about your story, not just come on a podcast, but to speak about your story to other people. And it's taken you a good part of 20 years to come here and tell your story. How do you feel now that you have your story? You've said your story. Did it feel smaller than what it was?
It's really interesting because it has been 18 years, and over the years I've said parts of it and I've told over bits and I've spoken it over in my head a million times. So yeah, cutting it into an hour does make it feel much less significant than it was.
Like it wasn't such a big deal?
Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, like, does it sound like it was? Like, is this really a story? Like, is this really something that lives up to all the other experiences that you've shared from all the other people? So I do have a little bit of that inside me. So never feel like an experience was too small to need support if it feels big for you.
Thank you very much.
Tsippy, thank you for coming here. It was such an honor.
I wish Mother to Mother lots of strength and continued ability to help women, because I know I work with women and I meet up with them after birth.
They're so grateful to you.
And they're so grateful to Mother to have that hub and that place and that support. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode on Spotlight. If you were affected by any of the challenges we have discussed, then please visit www.mtom.org.uk/podcast for guidance on where to find help.
Do you also have a story to share? Be in touch if you'd also like to be a lifeline for others by sharing and empowering women across the world. Podcasts at mtom.org.uk.